Protests and looting have rocked the streets of Port-au-Prince as demonstrators demand the resignation of Haiti's prime minister.
The people believe Prime Minister Ariel Henry is unable to address the economic crisis as he announced that subsidies are too expensive for one of the world's poorest countries. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Rich Hielago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. Typhoon Carding's devastation continues to unleash as the death toll now accounts for 12 and more than 3 billion pesos in damage to agriculture's sector. Metro Manila's positivity rate for COVID-19 increased to 18.9%, but the hospital utilization rates remain low. At least 19 people were killed after a suicide bomber attacked a learning center in Kabul. Hurricane Ian wreaks havoc on Florida as U.S. authorities warn of death toll. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemns Russia's annexation plan to 4 regions of Ukraine.
It is a dangerous escalation.
The casualties from the devastation of Typhoon Carding continue to rise, with the death toll now standing at 12. Data from the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, shows that 2 of the casualties were from Tanay Rizal and Baliwag, Bulacan due to drowning. Another 2 died in Zambales because of drowning in a motorcycle accident, while 1 each died in Antipolo, Rizal and Burdeos, Quezon due to a landslide. 6, most of whom were fishermen from Bicol and Calabarzon, remain missing. The NDRRMC also reported that almost 3.05 billion pesos of agricultural damage were reported in Regions 1, 2, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, Bicol Region, and Cordillera Administrative Region, or CAR, which affected 164,217 hectares of farmlands. Based on reports by the Department of Agriculture Risk Reduction and Management Operations Center, a total of 2.95 billion peso value of production loss affected 103,552 farmers and fishermen. The typhoon's damage to infrastructure is estimated at 23.75 million pesos, while government agencies through the NDRRMC continue to monitor the situation.
According to independent monitoring group Octa Research, the COVID-19 positivity rate in the National Capital Region, or NCR, has increased to 18.9%. Octa stated the positivity rate, or the percentage of people found positive for COVID-19 among the total number of individuals tested, increased to 18.9% as of September 28 from 17.5% as of September 21st. But the reproduction number decreased to 1.10 as of September 26 from 1.26 as of September 19. The reproduction number speaks of the number of people infected by 1 case. A reproduction number below 1 indicates that the transmission of the virus is slowing down. The growth of new cases in the NCR may have slowed, but cases are still rising, according to Octa Research. It said the average daily attack rate in the NCR was considered to be moderate at 7.32 per 100,000 individuals. Now, the good news is that the healthcare utilization rate for COVID in the NCR remained low at 35%, while the ICU occupancy also remained low at 29%. Thus, the NCR is at moderate risk, according to Octa. Health authorities are urging the public to comply with the minimum public health standards, such as hand washing and wearing of face masks. They also insisted the public to have booster shots.
For Globe subscribers, you will get a reprieve from receiving messages with clickable links. In a bid to ramp up security against SMS-linked scams, Globe Telecom will temporarily block all messages from all networks with clickable links. In a statement, the Agila-led telco said the unprecedented measure will block the delivery of person-to-person text message with clickable links coming from all networks. Globe Chief Information Security Officer Anton Bonifacio said before the telco only blocked access to malicious links in text messages to help protect customers. But this time, they're blocking the actual message. According to Globe, SMS blocking will take effect while the passage of the SIM registration bill is pending. Both the Senate and the House of Representatives have ratified the SIM registration bill after ironing out some provisions and is expected to be transmitted to Malacanang for the signature of the President.
Former President and PDP Laban Chairman Rodrigo Duterte have assured his full support to the leadership of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. But he also vowed not to be quiet when he sees any wrongdoings in the current administration. Nadine Aguilar reports.
During his speech before the National Assembly and oath-taking of newly installed PDP Laban officials, former President and PDP Laban Chairman Rodrigo Duterte said he will not oppose nor go against President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and his party. Instead, the former chief executive said he will throw all his support to Marcos Jr.'s leadership.
We are not putting up a strong party against the party of the President. We are not going to quarrel with him. Far from it. We will be giving our full support for him politically.
Duterte hopes Marcos will properly fulfill his duties to the people in accordance with his mandate. But he also vowed to be critic and fiscalism if he sees any wrongdoings under the Marcos administration.
But the President can be very sure that in the coming days, we will fiscalize. Pag may nakita tayong masama, we will raise our voice because that is the essence of our presence here.
The party elected its new leaders, with Palawan 2nd District Representative Jose Alvarez held as the new party president. Also, elected as the new party officials include Senator Robin Hood Padilla as executive vice president, and Parañaque City 1st District Representative Edwin Alvarez as a Vice President for NCR, Senator Francis Tolentino as a Vice President for Luzon, Cebu City Mayor Michael Rama as a Vice President for Visayas, and Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa as a Vice President for Mindanao. Former President Duterte would remain the party's chairman. Nadine Aguilar, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has encouraged the Social Security System, or SSS, to embody excellence in their service to the Filipinos. During his speech at the 65th anniversary of SSS, the president also committed to support efforts to improve SSS's services to its members. Eden Santos has the details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has committed to support efforts to efficiently improve the services of the Social Security System, or SSS. President Marcos graces today's 65th anniversary of the SSS and this year's Balikat ng Bayan Awards in the agency's headquarters in Quezon City.
As your president, I assure you that I commit myself to every initiative that will improve the efficiency and productivity of the SSS and thereby improve the lot and welfare of our people.
The chief executive said the SSS could play a role to strengthen the protection of its members amid the challenges brought by the pandemic and the geopolitical situation abroad.
The SSS critical role in strengthening our country's social protection is more crucial now more than ever. With the country recovering from the pandemic, with the country trying to recover from the shocks that are coming from the geopolitical situation around the world. Still, I am truly excited to see more ways to which the SSS will bring its services closer to its members and make a positive impact in the communities that you serve.
President Marcos also noted the SSS programs implemented under his administration to help sectors, including farmers and fishermen. These programs include Contribution Subsidy Program, the Contribution Penalty Condonation Program, and the Flexible Payment Scheme for fishermen and farmers.
No, but I would like just to quote to it these programs that we have just begun. Since this new administration began, the implementation of the Contribution Subsidy Provider Program. Inaalalayan natin yung mga hindi masyadong makapagbayad at naghahanap tayo ng paraan para hindi naman sila na masyadong mabigat ang kanilang hinaharap na pangangailangan, especially during the pandemic.
President Marcos commended the SSS for their service, which he described as of great value to the Filipino people. He also encouraged the SSS to always embody excellence in what they do and put their best to the interests of the people.
The job that you have been doing continues to be of great value to our people. The job that you are doing is exactly the job that we had asked you to do, to provide the safety nets, to provide the guarantees for our people. When tragedy strikes, when crisis strikes, and when people are just going about their daily business.
Also in attendance at the SSS event were Labor Secretary Bienvenido Laguesma, Special Advisor to the President Anton Lagdameo, and SSS President and CEO Michael Regino. Eden Santos reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Congress will continue dispensing its duties despite the month-long break, which will start October 1st up to November 6. House Speaker Martin Romualdez said the House would allow all standing and special committees to conduct hearings during the congressional recess. The House leadership said this will enable lawmakers to continue their mandate to create important legislation. Romualdez and House Majority Leader Manix Dalipe directed all chairpersons of standing committees and special committees to convene committee meetings, even though Congress is in recess, to fast-track the approval of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s priority measures, especially those intended for the post-pandemic economic recovery and the welfare of the Filipinos.
Solon has introduced to the House of Representatives House Bill number 3191, providing housing programs for government nurses. The proposal, authored by Pinuno Party List Representative Howard Ginto, recognizes the need to provide house programs to government nurses to prevent them from leaving their posts to work abroad. Ginto said the nurses play a significant role as they work in hospitals, clinics, offices, schools, home health care, and senior living facilities. At the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a high demand for nurses abroad with huge salaries. Once enacted into law, the Nurses Housing Program will provide government nurses with housing loans with affordable interest rates and a long-term payment period. While the National Housing Authority, the National Home Mortgage Finance Corporation or Pag-ibig Fund, Home Guarantee Corporation, and the Government Service Insurance System would be mandated to implement and fund the program.
More on our nurses. The Philippine Nurses Association says it is time for nurses to have a security of tenure in the country. This is amidst the lack of nurses working in the country. Here's Madeline Villar Moratillo for the details.
It is time for nurses to have a security of tenure in the country. This is the call to action of the Philippine Nurses Association amid the scarcity of nurses in the Philippines.
How can we promise a job security for our nurses kung renewable ang kontrata niya?
According to the Department of Health Officer in charge, Maria Rosario Berjere, there is a shortage of 106,000 nurses in the Philippines. The reason was most of the nurses prefer to work abroad due to bigger compensation. Hence, health authorities said they are not in favor of increasing the deployment cap of nurses, which right now is at 7,000. Here in the Philippines, the entry level of nurses in public hospitals is 32,000 pesos. In private hospitals, it is 15,000 pesos only. Melvin Miranda, president of the Philippine Nurses Association, said it is hard for the government to commit the same compensation that foreign countries are offering to nurses. Aside from the government's commitment to equal pay for those in public and private hospitals, it is better to attain permanent work and have no contract.
How we will really establish din yung ating voice sa mga local government units. Kasi tulad nga po nung nabanggit ni DOH, ating pong OIC, Dr. Berhere, that we need, di ba ma'am, sabi niya, 106,000.
Yes,
pero with
po.
that 106,000, ito ba ay permanent positions? Ito ba ay mga nurses natin that will be also identified to augment the needed nurses po sa mga municipalities and local government units? Yun yung tinitignan natin.
It can be remembered that this is one of the promises made by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. when he spoke at the Nurses Convention. Yet he admitted that this is difficult to do because of a shortage of funds. Berhere said she will speak with the Department of Migrant Workers and the Department of Labor and Employment to discuss what can be done to address the lack of nurses and other healthcare professionals.
Sa mga bansang nagde-deploy tayo ng healthcare workers natin, ano ang pwede namang maging kapalit para sa atin like scholarships, exchange programs at iba pa para naman mas magkaroon tayo ng benepisyo with this migration and also para naman mas magkaroon ng career path ang ating mga healthcare workers who are going abroad.
Miranda urges the Congress to pass a new nursing law that will ensure the protection of the nurses. In recognition of the heroism and great contribution of the health workers against COVID-19, they were given additional allowances under Bayanihan 1 and 2. However, there are still many nurses who said they have not received their additional allowance. Madeline Villar Moratillo reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, suicide blast kills 19 in Kabul. U.S. President Joe Biden said America is coming together as one as Florida faces the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. And Russian President Vladimir Putin said the West is ready to hurt any country for its own ends. These and more stories when we return.
Ba't kayo naghiwalay?
Niyaya ko siya magpakasal. Tapos, hindi siya pumayag.
Kasi naman, hindi pa ako handa, no?
Bakit?
Dapat, siya na yung lumalapit sa'yo.
Sa'yo pa rin.
Okay ka lang?
Kahit ako'y malayo, ikaw pa rin ang nasa isip ko.
Kahit ako'y malayo, ikaw pa rin ang nasa isip ko.
Ikaw pala kumagat sa akin, ha?
Ikaw pala yung kumagat sa akin, ha?
Doc Willie, ikaw ang boyfriend ni Juliet.
Yes, Abo.
Nakita ko na kasi yung pinalit sa akin ni Juliet, eh.
May tsura?
Nakita mo yung mukha ko?
Oo.
Bawasan mo lang ng 10 kagapuhan. Ganun yung itsura niya.
Naging background dancer ni Vilma Santos. Let's talk about love. I can't imagine having it all and then suddenly being given that news.
This is the first time I'm going to discuss it, and only because I trust you.
Anong secret?
Number one secret is Scarlett. I want to be with her. Please give me time.
Tissue please. Tissue break. Tissue break.
Negosyo tips ba ang hanap mo? Abangan ang nakakaaliw at makabuluhang kwentuhan at kulitan with our expert couple pagdating sa online business.
Hello mga Suki! Lovely Abelia here!
Benj Manalo!
Abangan ang aming kwentong negosyo dito sa Moments with Gladys Reyes.
Dito sa
Net
25!
Kaya ano pang hinihintay ninyo? Imay nyo na ang episode ng Moments ngayong linggo. Alas 4 hanggang alas 5 ng hapon. Dito lang yan sa Net 25.
Sa mga gusto, pamain na lang. Pamain. Yes, ayan. Ay,
All na po tayo.
ganun ba?
Living, loving, bonding, moments. Panalo tayo pag together. Walang talo pag together. Let's dance together. Sa Net 25.
The news continues here on Mata ng Agila International. 19 people died after a suicide bomber attacked a learning center in Afghanistan's capital of Kabul. The blast happened in the Dasht-e-Barchi neighborhood, a predominantly Shiite Muslim area home to the minority Hazara community, the targets of some of Afghanistan's most deadly attacks. Kabul police spokesman said the students were preparing for an exam when the suicide bomber attacked the center. Families rushed to area hospitals where ambulances were arriving with victims, and lists of those confirmed dead and wounded were posted to the walls. According to Kabul police spokesman Khalid Zadrain, 19 people have been martyred and 27 others wounded. At the hospital, the Taliban forced families of victims to leave the site, fearing that there could be a follow-up attack on the crowd. Videos online and photos published by local media showed bloodied victims being carried away from the scene. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. The Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan last year brought an end to the two-decade war and a significant reduction in violence, but security has begun to deteriorate in recent months.
Hurricane Ian unleashed historic devastation in Florida, leaving a yet unknown number of dead in its wake, officials said Thursday as the storm regrouped in the Atlantic on a path toward the Carolinas. The storm, one of the most powerful ever to hit the United States, left hundreds of people in need of rescue. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said while warning it was still too early to get a clear picture of how many people had died. DeSantis said concrete information about casualty numbers could be expected in the coming days. The governor also warned of hazards after the hurricane's devastation.
There's going to be hazards out where people can be in harm's way still. Just because the storm is passed does not mean that there's not additional hazard.
Fort Myers, where Ian made landfall as a powerful Category 4 hurricane on Wednesday, took much of the brunt of the storm as streets became rivers and seawater poured into houses. Dozens of boats moored in the marina were sunk while others were tossed onto downtown streets. Trees were toppled by howling winds of up to 150 miles per hour or 240 kilometers per hour. Earlier on Thursday, DeSantis described the destruction in the southwest part of the state as a 500-year flood event. The storm, one of the most powerful ever to hit the United States, left hundreds of people in need of rescue.
Speaking during a briefing at the Federal Emergency Management Agency in Washington, D.C., U.S. President Joe Biden says the country is coming together as one as Florida faces the aftermath of Hurricane Ian.
And today, security in the Pacific and for the Pacific Islanders remains as critical as ever to us, and I hope to you as well, to secure the security of America, quite frankly, and the world depends on your security. and the security of the Pacific Islands, and I really mean that.
Biden warns that Hurricane Ian may end up being Florida's deadliest storm ever, and cities fears there could be substantial numbers of fatalities across the state. Biden says
we're also announcing more than $110 million in expended U.S. programs to improve the lives of Pacific Islanders, which includes more than $130 million in new investments to support.
Biden says there are reports of what may be a substantial loss of life, adding that when conditions allow, he will be going to Florida. He also mentions he intends to visit the U.S. Caribbean island of Puerto Rico, which is reeling from the earlier Hurricane Fiona. The U.S. president praises Florida's emergency services, describing the huge scale of the task facing them as they enter zones devastated by Ian's punishing wind and flooding. Among the resources in action, the U.S. Coast Guard has deployed 16 helicopters, 6 airplanes, and 18 boats, saying these are dangerous missions. Biden mentions he had talked with DeSantis several times over the hurricane response.
A day after Hurricane Ian devastates the state of Florida in the U.S., people there endure the aftermath of its wrath. Meanwhile, the neighboring state, South Carolina, braces for Ian's arrival. Melissa Potes in Florida reports.
As people here in Florida begin mopping up after Hurricane Ian left a wave of destruction in the state, officials in South Carolina are preparing for Ian's arrival. The storm should hit landfall by the middle of Friday. Forecasters figure it will be a Category 1 storm, much weaker than when it barreled through Florida as a Category 4 hurricane. But the National Hurricane Center warns it could bring with it life-threatening flooding, storm surge, and strong winds. Meanwhile, in Florida, 10 people have been confirmed dead in the storm. But the loss of life could be much higher as first responders get into heavily damaged areas. U.S. President Joe Biden says Ian could be the deadliest hurricane in Florida history. More than 2 million people are still without power, and it could be days before the lights are back on for some. Some places have no drinking water. Many people remain trapped in their homes. Flooding has washed out roads and bridges, isolating some regions. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis describes the storm as a 500-year flood event. The people of Florida face the arduous task of cleaning up the damage, rebuilding not only homes, but lives. Melissa Potes, Orlando, Florida, mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Meanwhile, Canada's Ontario province sends help to Nova Scotia, where 400,000 households have lost power due to Hurricane Fiona. Yolanda Aspiras tells us more.
In response to the devastating effect of Hurricane Fiona in Atlantic Canada this week, Ontario's Hydro One is sending staff and crew Tuesday to help restore power and electricity in affected areas. Hurricane Fiona brought heavy rainfall and severe winds, bringing much damage to the province of Nova Scotia. More than 400,000 households have lost power due to the storm. Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson have said that Ontario and Ottawa will be on standby and continue to provide further support to Nova Scotia when needed. The Government of Canada has also deployed the Canadian Armed Forces to help with rescue and recovery efforts. As of Tuesday, 300,000 households are still without power in the region. Reports say that Hurricane Fiona will cost about $300 million to $700 million in insured losses, making it as one of Nova Scotia's largest and most devastating natural disasters in the province's history. Yolanda Aspiras, Mata ng Agila International, Toronto, Ontario. Trusted, connected, on point.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says Russia's plan to annex 4 regions of Ukraine aren't worth the paper they're written on. Guterres says the plan has no legal value and deserves to be condemned by the international community.
It cannot be reconciled with the international legal framework. It stands against everything the international community is meant to stand for. It flouts the purposes and principles of the United Nations. It is a dangerous escalation. It has no place in the modern world. It must not be accepted.
Guterres adds that if Russia does not back down, it will prolong the impact the war is having on the global economy.
Russia's plan to draft men from the army reserves into the military to join the battle in Ukraine is having its problems. As the war in Ukraine continues, President Vladimir Putin admits mistakes have been made in the rollout of his so-called mobilization plan. Putin confirms media reports that elderly people, students, the sick, and those without military experience are being called up. He says people in those groups are exempted, adding those mistakes have to be corrected and avoided in the future. The country has also seen public opposition to the draft. More than 24,000 people have been arrested in demonstrations since the plan was announced on September 21st. And many Russians are fleeing the country to avoid being sent to the front lines.
For those Russian men trying to avoid military service, there is one less option. Finland has closed its border with Russia to tourists. The move follows a surge in arrivals after Moscow's mobilization order. Finland's foreign minister cites damage to the country's international relations as the justification for the decision. As well, he says the illegal referendums in Ukraine and sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline have added to the concerns. There are some exceptions on human rights grounds. Russians can still enter Finland to meet family, work, or study. Officials also say the move could trigger an increase in asylum applications and illegal border crossings.
Russian President Vladimir Putin slams the West during his speech today in the accession of new territories to the Russian Federation in St. George's Hall of the Kremlin, which declared independence from Ukraine. According to Putin, the West has been searching for new opportunities to weaken and destroy Russia because they are haunted by the existence of such a powerful nation. Putin added that the United States is the only country in the world to have twice used nuclear weapons and established a precedent. He also claimed that by sabotaging the Nord Stream, the United States had already started to dismantle Europe's energy infrastructure. Putin also demanded that he is ready for Ukraine to immediately halt hostilities and resume talks. Moscow, meanwhile, would not talk about the outcomes of the referendums held in the liberated areas. The president also issued a warning, saying that Russia would use all legal means to defend its borders and would do everything to ensure the security of its people.
People have made their choice, and this choice is beyond any doubt. Today, we're going to sign the treaties on admitting the Donetsk People's Republic, Lugansk People's Republic, Zaporozhye region, and Kherson region. I am sure that the Federal Assembly will support constitutional laws on admitting to Russia 4 new regions, 4 new constituent entities, because it is the will of millions of people.
Next up, U.S. President Joe Biden said the world depends on your security at U.S. Pacific Island Summit. Myanmar junta court convicts Australian economist Aung Suu Kyi to 3 years. And demonstrators call for resignation of Haitian Prime Minister. Find out more about these stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Einstein once said, adversity introduces a man to himself. This cannot be any truer to the men and women who were exposed to hardships in their childhood, yet are able to rise above. These are the people who were exposed to hardships and use the same to empower them. Let us polish our ambitions from the life lessons of our guests, Ms. Cecile Bravo and Michael Alfonso, the people behind Entele Builders and Development Corporation.
Start small. Huwag kagad yung big dreams. Pakita mo muna yung kakayahan mo dito sa maliliit kasi it's a way na matitest mo. Meron muna dyang trial and error. And always remember, hindi porket it works for someone, it will always work for you. Kasi kailangan alamin mo yung capabilities mo, ano ba yung skills na meron ka, para yun ang papasukin mong business.
Only here in Open for Business.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. U.S. President Joe Biden announces $810 million in new funding for Pacific Islands at a first-of-a-kind summit with their leaders in Washington. Biden vows a closer partnership with a strategic but sparsely populated region. Addressing leaders of South Pacific states, including 12 heads of state or government, Biden says he wants to show an enduring commitment.
I'm looking forward to seeing you tonight. I'm going to turn it over to seconds. And today, security in the Pacific and for the Pacific Islanders remains as critical as ever to us, and I hope to you as well. To secure the security of America, quite frankly, and the world depends on your security and the security of the Pacific Islands, and I really mean that.
Biden says a great deal of the history of the world is going to be written in the Indo-Pacific over the coming years and decades, and the Pacific Islands are a critical voice in shaping that future. The United States has been the key player in the South Pacific since its World War II victory. Among U.S. pledges at the summit was $20 million for the Solomon Islands to develop tourism. The 4-year U.S. program will focus on empowering women and finding alternatives to logging.
We're also announcing more than $110 million in expended U.S. programs to improve the lives of Pacific Islanders, which includes more than $130 million in new investments to support climate resilience and to build sustainable blue economies in the Pacific Islands, prepare for climate impacts on public health and food security, and to strengthen sustainable development.
Mr. President.
Myanmar's junta convicted an Australian economist to 3 years in prison, while also handing down another sentence to ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi for violation of a secrets law. Both have been detained since a coup in February last year when the military ousted Suu Kyi's government, for which Sean Turnell was the economic advisor. Turnell was also convicted for 3 years under the country's Immigration Act. A source said that, adding that he will serve the second conviction concurrently and that his sentence would be eligible for a time already served reduction. This sentence, or his sentence, provoked a swift reaction from Australia, with the Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, rejecting his conviction and urging his immediate release. She said the economist was tried in a closed court and Australian officials had made every effort to attend the verdict but were denied access. A junta spokesman did not respond to a request for comment.
Demonstrators take to the streets of Port-au-Prince in Haiti to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Ariel Henry, whom they believe is unable to address the economic crisis. Protests and looting have rocked the already unstable country since September 11, when the government announced a fuel price hike. Protesters lambasted the prime minister, saying he is useless. A demonstrator cried out that the price of basic necessities keeps increasing. Another one said prisoners are also dying in jail, while some lamented that they cannot even pay back their loan because of the situation they are living in. Haiti's UN envoy Helen Lalim described the situation as an economic crisis, a gang crisis, and a political crisis have converged into a humanitarian catastrophe. She said that in the last 2 weeks alone, attacks on the World Food Program have resulted in the loss of some 2,000 tons of food or food aid valued at close to $5 million. The WFP Deputy Executive Director Valerie Guarneri expressed grief over the crisis and noted that in less than a year, the price of a basic food basket in Haiti has increased by 52%. Thousands of people demonstrated in cities across France Thursday, demanding higher wages and showing their opposition to President Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms. The peaceful protests created traffic jams and forced schools in several cities to close. The protesters included striking teachers, students, and other workers. Although trade unions called for a general strike, many labor organizations decided not to take part in Thursday's protests. The demonstrators say people can't cope with price hikes. They are also upset with Macron's plan to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 or 65. Further protests are planned for the middle of October.
Shots were heard early Friday around Burkina Faso's presidential palace and the headquarters of its military junta, which seized power in a coup last January, according to witnesses. Several main roads in the capital, Ouagadougou, were blocked by troops and state television was cut, broadcasting a blank screen saying no video signal. A resident who lives close to the presidential palace said he heard heavy detonations around 4:30 a.m. and now the roads around his home have been sealed off by military vehicles. The cause of the gunfire and the detonations were not immediately clear. Meanwhile, troops were stationed at the main crossroads of the city, especially near the presidential home. Violence has raged in the landlocked West African country after Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandaogo Damiba seized power in a January coup, ousting elected leader Rochmar Christian Kabore and promising to rein in jihadists. Now, despite the dangers and a ban on skin whitening products, the substances remain popular in the African country of Cameroon. The Cameroon Dermatology Society says a survey 3 years ago suggests nearly 30% of women in the city of Douala use the products. It also found that 1 in 4 schoolgirls applied skin lighteners in 2019. Now, doctors have warned the products can cause cancer and other skin problems. Many of them have never been scientifically tested. As well as creams that are applied to the skin, other whiteners include potions, tablets, and even injections. Last month, Cameroon's health ministry banned the import, production, and distribution of cosmetic and personal products containing dangerous substances such as hydroquinone and mercury. Since the ban, police have launched raids on shops that sell whiteners. But despite the ban, a black market has already emerged for the products.
Volunteers collect plastic and garbage from the Nile River in the Egyptian capital of Cairo as part of the Nile cleanup campaign ahead of the 27th session of the United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP27.
We're here to clean the Nile, but really we're here for something bigger, which is to do our small part to try to help save our planet. There is nothing more important today, in this time and this place, than climate change.
Climate change is the #1 priority that we as a world have to deal with, because if we don't fix climate change, everything else is at risk, says a volunteer from the UK Embassy to Egypt. Zainab Kair, another volunteer, says there are many types of garbage waste in the Nile, but plastic waste is the most waste found in the river. The Global Climate Summit is set to be held in Sharm el-Sheikh from November 6 to 18.
The future of electric scooters in Paris may be decided tomorrow. 3 self-service operators of the scooters have been summoned to Paris City Hall. Local officials want a progress report before a new call for tenders is launched. And the question of banning scooters is on the table. Seems not everyone is enamored with this alternate form of transportation. There has been a notable jump in the number of accidents, and the environmental benefit is at best minimal.
Up next, the Philippine Peso ends the week stronger at 58 pesos and 625 centavos versus the US dollar. Chess governing body to investigate cheating claims. And compact prints exhibit returns to Townsville, Australia. Mata ng Agila International will be back after this short break.
Ang barkada, ang inyong aso, pati inyong mga pusa. Magsama-sama tayo, sa kilos sila tayo, sa kilos nila ng kilos.
Bubuhatin lang.
May tumatandang dalaga sa magandang palengke.
Magkano po full tank nito? Diesel.
Ate, diesel.
Kuya, dyan lang sa kanto. Kuya, pwede magpatulong? Ayusin mo, kuya. Malaglag. Dahan-dahan, ha? Yan.
For safety lang, sir.
Security mo to?
Ayun.
Parang namumukhaan kita.
Kita na tayo, no? Ikaw yun, di ba? Pinakilala ka sa akin ni Joey. Oh, no.
Going up to be first, we are first one.
At abangan niyo po kami bilang guest performer sa
Letters and Music ngayong Sabado,
1 to 2 p.m.
Siyempre, dito lamang sa Net 25! See you po!
Good news, the Philippine Peso continued to recover and bounced back against the US dollar today after a series of marking fresh historic lows. The peso gained 34.5 centavos to close today's trade at 58 pesos and 625 centavos against the US dollar, compared to Thursday's finish at 58 pesos and 97 centavos versus the dollar. This is the third straight day of the local currency's recovery streak against the greenback after it punched a new record low of 58 pesos and 99 centavos against the dollar last Tuesday. The local currency touched the 59 peso mark level on Wednesday, but trimmed down losses to close at 58 pesos and 98 centavos versus a dollar. Analysts say the peso's appreciation is due to Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas' tightening of reporting requirements on foreign exchange transactions.
Facebook parent Meta put out the word to employees that it will freeze hiring to cut costs as it endures tough economic times, the Wall Street Journal reported. In a report from the Journal, it said that Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg has a plan to pause in hiring during a weekly all-hands meeting with the aim to cut expenses by at least 10%. Meanwhile, Meta declined to comment on the report, but it referred to remarks made by Zuckerberg in July when the company reported its first quarterly revenue drop and a plunging profit. The social media giant's chief said during an earnings call that teams would shrink to reallocate their energy as it battled a turbulent economy and the rising phenomenon that is TikTok. With a record of seemingly endless upward growth, Meta still struggled to fight early this year as it has its first decline in global daily users.
Britain's Royal Mint unveiled the official effigy of King Charles III that will appear on coins following his accession to the throne. With the personal approval of the new king, the new effigy made by British sculptor Martin Jennings will be seen in a special £5 coin and a 50-pence coin commemorating the life of Queen Elizabeth II. Jennings was humbled to sculpt the portrait of King Charles III, which will be seen and held by people around the world for centuries. Charles's portrait faces to the left, surrounded by a Latin inscription. According to Royal Mint, a body responsible for depicting monarchs on coins for over 1,100 years, the coins showing images of Charles will start to be seen in the coming months.
The governing body of chess said that it would investigate claims by five-time world champion Magnus Carlsen that American player Hans Niemann had cheated. The International Chess Federation says that it will create an investigatory panel comprising 3 members of its Fair Play Commission to look into the claims. The chess world has been shaken for weeks by the Carlsen-Niemann controversy since Norway's Carlsen withdrew from the Sinquefield Cup in the United States after losing to the 19-year-old. Last week, Carlsen's abrupt withdrawal from a match against Niemann in the Julius Baer Generation Cup online tournament reignited the furor. The 31-year-old Carlsen openly accused Niemann of cheating, tweeting, "I believe that Niemann has cheated more and more recently than he has publicly admitted." Carlsen did not specify the exact form of the alleged cheating, but added there was more that one would like to say. Niemann has acknowledged cheating online twice when he was 12 and 16, but says he has never played fraudulently in a face-to-face match. In early September, the huge chess platform Chess.com banned the American for cheating on the site. Presiding Judge Loralee Cruz Datahan of the Taguig Regional Trial Court Branch 69 issued an order dated September 29 denying TV host Ferdinand Vong Navarro's urgent motion for the NBI to retain his custody. The court ruled after a thorough consideration of the arguments of both the prosecution and the defense. The court finds that the accused Navarro was not able to justify the need for his continued detention at the NBI facility. The Taguig court contended that it must also be emphasized that the city jail is mandated to exercise great care so that the human rights of the prisoners are respected and protected. Thus, in the absence of any evidence to the contrary, the presumption of regularity and the performance of duties by the jail personnel prevails. Cruz Datahan issued a non-bailable warrant of arrest against Navarro on September 19 for the crime of rape that he allegedly committed against model Denise Cornejo on January 17, 2014. Cornejo's lead counsel, lawyer Howard Calleja, said with the court's decision, they will push for Navarro's immediate transfer to the Taguig City Jail. Before the decision came out, Cornejo's camp also filed a motion asking the Taguig court to immediately transfer Navarro to the Taguig City Jail, saying the actor should not be treated any differently.
Stormzy has pleaded for diversity to no longer be used as a buzzword or a box to tick in his acceptance speech at the Association of Independent or AIM Music Awards 2022. Ryan Florentino from the UK has the story.
The Vossi Bop rapper was among the winners at this year's ceremony in London on Wednesday night, taking home the Diversity Champion Award. Speaking in a pre-recorded acceptance speech, Stormzy said, "I encourage everyone in the room today to not just use diversity as a buzzword, but for you lot, whatever position you're in, whatever role you play, to really be a driving factor for it, and not just see it as a quota or as a box to tick." Stormzy's Murky Foundation has pledged £10 million over 10 years to organizations and charities committed to fighting for racial equality, justice reform, and black empowerment within the UK. According to the latest figures from UK Music, 22% of people working in the music industry are from black, Asian, and minority ethnic backgrounds, while women hold 49.6% of industry roles. However, the progression for these groups remains sluggish, with representation tailing off in higher age and income brackets. Really see the worth and the value in being diverse. Thank you to the AIM Awards, Stormzy said. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I am Ryan Florentino reporting for Matana Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Compact Prints exhibit is back in Townsville, Australia, providing an avenue for artists to exchange ideas and creations. Morgan Goodfellow tells us more.
20 years after the Compact Prints was first held here, it's back with a celebration of contemporary print practices, embracing traditional and technological methods.
The exhibit welcomed international artists since 2004 and has continued as a biennial exhibition including national and international tours. Originally conceived and curated by Rebecca Butler, Compact Prints 2022 is a forum for artists to exchange creations and ideas. It also extends help to Umbrella Studio Townsville, home to many well-renowned artists and art exhibitions through its fundraising auction. All prints are available through a silent auction running until the exhibition closes. The program is greatly appreciated and anticipated, and shared widely via printmaking organisations, artist participants, networks, and online.
Auction registration and bidding are available to the public and are encouraged to revisit throughout the exhibition. Compact Prints International Exhibition will be on display till the 2nd of October. Morgan Goodfellow, Townsville, Australia, Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Now let's take a look back on some historical events that happened on this day, September 30. In 1862, Minister-President of Prussia Otto von Bismarck delivers his famous Blood and Iron speech on the unification of German territories. In 1950, radio's Grand Ole Opry is broadcast on TV for the first time. And in 1972, Pittsburgh right fielder Roberto Clemente doubles off Mets' John Matlack to become the 11th MLB player to record 3,000 hits as Pirates beat New York 5-2.
And it's the weekend. And to help you start with your weekend, here's a quote from American author Tony Robbins. Goal setting is the secret to a compelling future. Are you the type of person to write down your goals?
I'm not exactly. I'm more the adventurous and risk-taker type.
I am like that too, but I have to write down my plans. Every day I have to do that. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Enjoy your weekend, but do catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores saying happy weekend. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.